Instagram. So I'm in my studio and I am greetings, my YouTube family. This is Sista Keachia with Movements for Change LLC. I always got to add that in. So I'm streaming on YouTube, I'm streaming on Instagram. This is my very first time streaming on YouTube and showing my face in this capacity. I have been posting videos here and there and doing my thing, but to really show up in my work and share the gems that I have to share with my community, I am excited. I'm happy for those who are on Instagram tonight because we are talking about when being strong is self-destructive and not noble. When being strong is self-destructive and no longer a noble act. A lot of us come from home, so I got my handy dandy notebook, all my notes, and those of you on Instagram, you all can leave your comments, like, share, do your thing, or you can come in on YouTube as well. But brief introduction, if you don't know who I am, my name is Sista Keachia. I am an inner child healing guide. I am an MSW. I have a master's degree in social work, and I am a thriving survivor. I can't leave that part out. My background is that I am a daughter to a mother, a father who are from the Caribbean, and some things happened, right? And I had some things to survive. I had to survive being the only daughter. I had to survive being hyper independent. I had to survive the idea that I needed to be strong enough and that my worth was attached to what I can do and not who I am. I had to survive that. So I'm in the show. I have some support here. So I'm asking my support team to come over here for a second. If you can go ahead and just click that for me, please, because I don't have access. I can't touch that. So thank you. Go ahead. The bottom. All right. So we're talking about when being strong is self-destructive and not noble, when it is a problem for our lives, right? So some of us come from homes where we were left alone to figure things out. And the language that I'm using tonight to explain this complex of being too strong is what we're going to call hyper independence. How many of you all are hyper independent? You don't like nobody coming to rescue you. You want to figure it out on your own. And your sense of self and your worth is deeply attached to what you do and how you can prove that you are more than enough and you don't need anyone, right? We find different ways to do that. Okay. Sometimes it's through financial security. Sometimes it's through our homes. Sometimes it's through the cars that we drive. Sometimes it's how we think we need to show up and look for others. It shows up in many, many ways. But hyper independence is a trauma response. Listen to this. Hyper independence is a trauma response, and it comes from emotional damage caused by abandonment, broken trust, or betrayal. Is caused by abandonment, broken trust, or betrayal. So that repeated abandonment, this repeated idea, people who you expected to be there for you, but they were not. It left you with this pattern of, well, if they're not coming to show up for me, guess what? I need to show up for myself, until that pattern becomes a character trait. That character trait becomes a lifestyle. Okay. And that lifestyle shows up as, I don't need anyone, but I am going to help everyone. How many of y'all are in friendships and in situationships with people who you give more than you receive, but then you end up bitter and angry about it? You end up feeling bitter and angry about it. You give more than you receive, but you always end up feeling bitter and angry about it. Please, if you are here or if you're in my Instagram, please say me. Give me a comment. Wave your hand. Say me. I'm dealing with that. You're always showing up for others, but others, you don't hold them accountable to show up for you in that way because you are hyper independent. You are afraid of needing support. So you are hyper independent. Okay. Some of us got punished for not knowing. There was this expectation that you should know, sometimes in more subtle ways than direct. So sometimes being criticized when you couldn't figure things out, that indirect criticism, sometimes it was very direct and very in your face and right direct at you. Get it together, right? Some of us were just left alone, no support. We didn't have the people to back us up, and we had to figure things out on our own. I tell this story a lot about, I graduated from high school when I was 17. I skipped a grade, but I had to apply for scholarships. I had to figure it out. I had to figure out how to get to that next level of my life. And there were people in community who were there to support me. But that idea at such a young age that I had to get it together to make that happen, that put pressure on me. And it became a pattern. It became this idea that I can always figure things out. So guess what? We become people who have great business ideas. We have great business ideas, but we face this stumbling block like, I don't know how to do it, so I'm not going to do it. When all you got to do is pick up the phone and call someone, or reach out to someone, or try to get help, or delegate. Because when we're hyper independent, we do not like to delegate. We don't like to delegate. We don't trust other people to do the things for us. We don't trust them. Oh yeah, hyper independence is deeply rooted and connected to trust and lack of trust. All right? Hyper independence is the act of not asking for help, struggling with asking because of the fear of appearing weak. A hyper independent person would rather struggle on their own than reach out for assistance or delegate to someone else. A hyper independent person would rather struggle on their own than reach out for assistance and ask for help. That's ultimately the biggest challenge in hyper independence. Okay? It is, I am not comfortable appearing weak. So I'm going to pretend my way through this process. Okay? It's ultimately the fear of being abandoned. That is what hyper independence is. It is, I am afraid of being rejected and abandoned again. So I'm going to pretend my way through this process. I'm going to pretend my way through this process. I'm going to appear as if I have it together. That is exactly what hyper independence is. How is it developed? Where does it come from? You think that you just become hyper independent because you feel like it and because you want to? No, it's actually developed and rooted in enoughness. So if you have, here's an example, and I love giving this example. If you have family who you've heard in your childhood or growing up into adulthood, you heard them demean others who didn't have it together. They didn't have the money. They lost their job. They needed a place to live. And you heard them being spoken about. Guess what? Your brain was taking notes. Your mind was like, wait a minute. So I can't do this because if I do this, then I'm going to be a problem. Okay, so I can't be in the situation where I don't have no money. That means I got to always have a job. Sometimes I feel like I got to have 3 jobs. Okay, so that means that I can't do this and I can't do that. And so you become someone who is not living your life fully. You're basically living your life to avoid the rejection, to avoid being looked down on, to avoid making human error. Like a really, really big, important part of being human is making mistakes. A huge part of being human is in making mistakes. It is in error. That's where we learn the most, when we get things wrong. Okay? But if we're preoccupied with being perfect because we don't want anyone to think that we make mistakes, right? And perfectionism, then you don't create room for your growth. You do not create an opportunity for you to grow and grow out of this need to appear like you have it together. You do not create, and I know this is familiar. If you're watching the replay, or if you're here with me right now, or if you're on my Instagram, you all know what I'm talking about. You all know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay? You know exactly what I'm talking about. So if you heard family members demeaning someone else because of their lack of, you registered that and you absorbed that. You took that on. Okay? If you were directly treated a certain way because you needed support, if you were directly treated a particular way because you needed support, then you develop this idea that you need to be hyper independent. Okay? Remember, hyperindependence is a trauma response. It is a side effect of trauma, of abandonment, of being alone, of being left to figure things out on your own. Okay? So, when we're hyper independent, we struggle with some things. And I'm going to go through those things very briefly because it's very important. A lot of times we hear things being spoken about, and sometimes we don't want to identify it because we're still in denial. I am someone who enjoys listing those things so that you can get a better view. So, hyper independence is struggling with forming connections. You struggle with forming solid connections and allowing others to connect with you. So you always have this wall up. You only connect when you feel safe. There's always a wall up for you. You only engage in what we call safe connections, controlled connections. So you worry, you struggle with forming connections and allowing others to come in to connect with you, but at the same time, you suffer in silence. You suffer in this silence of, I need help. I need support, but you're not allowing people inside to support you. And we don't want to allow the wrong people. Another important thing to recognize is if you're hyper independent and you've survived trauma, that means that you've had some people in your life who might not have meant you very well or have caused you harm. So you may have an attraction to people who are unavailable and are not good for you. Those are not the people that you want to depend on and lean into at all. Okay? So if you connections and allowing others to come inside to connect with you, then you are dealing with hyper independence. If you prefer to live life in solitude, alone all the time, and then you might be someone who says things like, well, I'm a loner. I'm a loner. Are you a loner, or are you a hyper independent person who struggles with allowing people to come inside? Are you a loner, or are you a hyper independent individual who struggles with allowing people to come in? Okay. Number 3, hyper independent people struggle with sharing their emotions. They struggle with sharing their feelings. I'm going to say we struggle because I'm a recovering hyper independent person, right? I'm going to tell y'all something. Let me tell y'all what threw my hyper independence through the roof, like out the window. And it wasn't even motherhood, because I was that mother who needed help in parenting, and I was just terrified of asking because I've been criticized and ridiculed in the past. But let me tell y'all what made me learn to ask for help: going to Africa. When I took my first trip to Africa, I did a GoFundMe. I raised money to help me in my travels because I decided that I was going to adopt an orphanage and that I needed support to do it. I don't have a nonprofit, but I know that there are people who are going to help me. I was terrified out of my wits. I was judging myself before anybody could have had the opportunity to judge me. I was terrified out of my wits. I was like, oh my God, they're going to talk about me. I'm begging money. I'm bad, right? So this is this blockage around receiving. Well, I did my GoFundMe, and someone gave me $1,000. Somebody wrote me $1,000 check. $1,000, $1,000. I actually collected everything that I requested in my GoFundMe request. I think it was like $3,000. I received everything that I asked for and more because people were donating clothes and school supplies and different products. Going to Africa helped me massage and work on my hyper independent muscle, because I thought asking for help meant that you were bad and that you were lazy and worthless. I come from a Jamaican culture. And where are there any Caribbean islanders and Jamaicans? Y'all know the stigma around asking for help. The first thing they're going to say is you're begging people things. You're begging people things. Stop beg. Okay, this idea of, and it's very individualistic, and it is not connected to our indigenous practices. In African cultures, everything is about interdependence. Ubuntu. I am, we are, like we need each other. But we come into this Western society and this Western culture, and we come into this space of, individualistic thinking. You have to figure things out on your own. You have to do it by yourself. If you can't figure it out, from the bottom to the top stories. I was sleeping in the elevator and I worked hard on labored and then that's how I got to this multi-million. These are the stories that we hear. So we judge ourselves. We prejudge ourselves when we have human experiences of needing support and needing help. Okay? We judge ourselves. So if you struggle with sharing your feelings and sharing your emotions, if you constantly feel like you have to hide your feelings, it means that you might have been judged for the feelings that you've had in the past, or you might have been punished in some way. Someone may have withdrawn love from you because you needed support, you needed help, you needed a hug, you needed to be held, you needed to be carried, you needed to be told everything's going to be all right. That is healthy. That's normal. That's human experience, right? But now you're an adult who shuts down and says, I can figure it out, and you don't want anyone to see how you feel. If you struggle with admitting defeat, so when things don't go your way and you might have made some mistakes and now you're in a position and you might not be winning in that position, quote unquote, and you struggle with admitting to the experience and admitting to defeat. If you struggle with admitting to defeat, then you are a hyper independent person. And the last one is if you internalize human error as failure. Do you see your own human error as failure? If you see your own human error as failure, then you are a hyper independent individual who is struggling with recognizing that you're just human, and that we make mistakes when we're human, and that it is okay because you can try again and you can learn from those mistakes, and that it is okay to ask the people who love and support you for support, and that everyone is not out to get you and everyone is not against you, and that you are not a bad person. You are not a bad person. I need y'all to say that. I am not a bad person. I'm not. You are not a bad person. So you'll go through these struggles, that I just listed in hyper independence, but in the same breath, you'll appear to be someone who's very strong-willed and highly capable and high functioning. I promise you all, I'm being very fully transparent. I resented hearing from people that I seemed mature for my age. Oh, you seem mature for your age. Oh, you seem so mature. Oh, you seem so mature. Oh, you got it together. Being someone who graduated school early and went to college at only 17 and being young, and I appeared to know what I want in my life and have it together. I was struggling. I needed somebody to say, I'm going to help you. And I did not know how to ask. And I'm going to tell you all, oftentimes when we don't ask for help, and we don't know how to ask for help, and we suffer in silence and in shame, we eventually develop suicidal ideation and thoughts. We develop this idea that we are not worthy of even living, and we may even attempt, to end our lives. That a lot of times, this is how suicidal ideation is formed. I hate myself. I can't get it together, and I can't allow anyone to see this part of me. Okay? I can't allow anyone to see this part of me. If you're watching on Instagram or if you are on YouTube, I hope you all get into my YouTube because this is new. This is my first night on my YouTube channel. I'm just so excited because guess what? Everything starts with the first step. So I'm having a moment. I'm kind of sidetracked, but back to how this results because I'm looking in the comments. Yep, it always makes things so much worse. It does. It makes things a whole lot worse. That shame and that guilt of hiding behind not having it together. And I'm telling you right now, I'm not speaking as a mental health professional, even though I am. I'm an MSW, but I'm speaking as a survivor that I've been in this position. I've even as a mother, you know what I mean? having children, raising a family, and not having a village per se, right? We live in a culture where neighbors don't even know each other sometimes. I struggled in silence, and I thought I needed to get it together. And I lived with that narrative for a long time. And eventually it started to eat me up to the point where I had to learn to ask for help. I had to learn to ask for help. Thank you. Big ups on the YouTube channel. Yes, movements for change. I had to learn to ask for help, or else it was going to lead to me adapting habits that were not good for my health or having suicidal ideation. I tell people all the time, we need to normalize what suicidal ideation is, okay? You can have a suicidal thought and not want to kill yourself or die by suicide. You can just feel like you want to disappear for a minute. You can just feel like, you don't want to be here. You don't, you want to drive to Key West. That's what I call it. You can be in the position where you just feel like you're at the end of the rope. It does not mean, and so knowing what that means, what your body is telling you, and knowing when you need to reach out for help is very important. So being independent is important. It is an excellent quality to have. It is very important to be independent, right? But it is not okay when being independent is at the risk of your mental health. This is when it is self-destructive. When being independent risks your mental health. This is when it becomes self-destructive. Okay? How do we heal? How do we heal from this level of self-destructive behaviors and thoughts? What do we do? How do we heal, right? Well, number one, we have to learn to say no. Because you can't be suffering in silence, struggling to handle your own stuff and trying to help other people. That is not going to work. It is not okay. You are not going to thrive in that space. You have to be able to say no. You have to set boundaries. Okay. Number two, ask for help. Find one person that you can trust, because asking for help is deeply connected to trust. If you don't trust someone, you are not going to ask for help. I've had people, I've been in therapy session because I'm a lifetime student. Like, I have my own therapist, and I've been in sessions where, they'll say, well, why don't you ask this? And I'm thinking, well, I don't want to. That is not where I can go. I don't feel safe there. So you want to identify where you feel safe, where you feel most safe, and ask for help. Reach out. Ask for help. Okay? And then number three, it's going to be important as you move away from hyper independence that you begin to work through your trust issues. You got to start to assess your issues around trust. Because if your reason for not asking for help is because you don't trust, now it might be about you and not the other person. I'm going to say that again. It might be about you and not the other person. So check in with your trust issues and start the process of healing that. Okay? Be honest about what you're healing. Number four, be honest about what you're healing, because denial is a beast. And if you are in denial that you've experienced trauma, if you are in denial that you may have been abused in your life, if you are in denial that your abuse is now affecting your adult life, if you are living in denial, the Nile, right? Like Egypt, the Nile, River Nile. No, if you are in denial, then you are going to continue to suffer. It's the season for us to own whatever it is that we have showing up. It's 2023. It's a number 7 year. It's calling us to shift. It's calling us to become more self-aware. It's calling us to become more mindful. This year is calling us to become so aware of ourselves that we can see how we want to show up before we even show up and act on the thoughts and the feelings. Okay? So check in with your denial. Right? Now, if you know someone who is hyper independent, if you're on the other end, because we all know someone in this position, whether it's ourselves or someone else, we all know someone in this position. So if you have observed that someone is hyper independent and they don't ask for help, check in on them. Just pick up the phone and say, I'm just checking in to see how you're doing, because I know you're someone who will not ask for help. I have a good friend, love her to bits, and she knows she'll call me even if it's quarterly. Hey, sugar, I know you're going to Ghana. Is there anything I can do? Or I know you're going on your tour to Africa. What do you need? Because I know you're not going to ask. Okay. And then I say, oh, you're exercising my muscle here. And then I ask, okay. It's asking for help is not complaining to someone about the problem and hoping that they're going to respond and offer help. That's not an ask for help. Okay. That is a manipulative ploy. You telling someone what a problem is and hoping that they'll offer support is not asking for help. Asking for help is asking, hey, I'm in this situation. I need some assistance. Do you think you can help me? I know that I saw you started a group the other day. I was struggling. I wanted to start a group here, but I didn't know how to use this app. Can you tell me how to use the app? Okay. Instead of spending days on end trying to figure out how to use the app for yourself, ask for help. There are going to be people, and if you've been burned in the past, I know this was something that has shown up for me, where in the past things were thrown in my face. You know, people have thrown in my face what they've had to do for me. And that has kept me on high alert. And it's like, oh my God, I'm never going to ask anyone for anything again. But then the question was like, now, how is that working for you? How is that working for you? It's not working at all. It's no good. Okay. So if you know someone who is hyper independent, check in on them, help them build trust, call them out gently. Don't call them out too rough, but be gentle. Call them out and say, hey, I noticed that you've been overworking. You're there with the children. You're doing this and you have not reached out for help. I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you. Okay? Call them out gently. Hyper independence is, I don't need anybody and I must do everything myself. But what it really means is my ability to trust has been injured by people systemically letting me down and failing me. Hyper independence is actually a cry. It is a cry for love. It is a cry for support. It is a cry for attention. Okay? Bell Hooks has a quote that I want to share with you all. I love me some Bell Hooks. You see all these books that I have in my library? I have some of Bell Hooks' books here. I love Bell Hooks. And she says, we cannot know love if we remain unable to surrender our attachment to power. We cannot know love if we remain unable to surrender our attachment to power. That is Mama Bell Hooks. If we struggle with surrendering our attachment to needing to be in control, needing to be the person, we can't know love. We'll never be able to ask for help. We'll never be able to surrender to the fact that we all need help. It'll be hard. Okay? When Lauryn Hill said, don't be a hard rock when you know you're a gem, that's what she was talking about. Okay? Why be a hard rock when you can be a soft gem? Okay? So this is some work that we have to do in 2023. This is some work that we have to become conscious and aware of and be mindful of how much we are moving in hyper independence. Okay? We have to be mindful. With that being said, that is me wrapping up my time with you all about hyper independence and when being strong is destructive and not noble. Y'all know when you're being strong. You know when you're doing that. Okay, I trust that this was helpful, supportive, and guiding you along your journey in healing, because we are all here healing from something. Each and every one of us, we are all on this earth plane healing from something, whatever that thing is. And that's why we came here, so we can continue our process of healing, right? But I have some things happening and I want to tell you about it so that you can come in for all that I have to offer, my offerings in 2023. So I'm going to segue into my offerings. I am hosting a masterclass series that is starting tomorrow. It's going to be Tuesday, Thursday of this week, Tuesday and Thursday of next week. It is called Healing the Inner Child and the Mother Wound, okay? Because we cannot neglect the reality that our relationship with mother is significant and it shapes our relationship with the rest of the world. And in this masterclass virtual event, which will be a 2-hour virtual event, I'm going to introduce you to the process of healing your inner child. And then we're going to move into the awareness of how you can heal your mother wound. If you have a father wound or a mother and a father wound, it still applies to you because it's the wound. We carry them in our heart. Our heart has a hole, the shape of that parent who did not know how to love us the way we deserve to be loved. So I'm inviting you all to go ahead and register. If you're on YouTube, it's healingtheinnerchild.eventbrite.com. If you're on Instagram, because I'm streaming on both places, if you're on Instagram, you can go to the link in my bio. It'll be my link tree. And the very first tab is the link to my free masterclass, healingtheinnerchild.eventbrite.com. I promise myself to show up fully in this year, no matter what. And a part of showing up fully is being consistent in my work, in my message. I don't care if only one person is present. That person has a soul and they're there for a reason. So I'm starting my commitment with my consistent podcasting. So I'm streaming on YouTube. I'm on my Instagram. Movement Mondays are back, Mondays at 9:30 p.m. Check me out on YouTube. I would love to have you all subscribe to my channel so that you can get the goodness that I have in doing my podcast every week through YouTube. And I am I am just elated to be in this space of being conscious and aware of my calling. Because when you know why you're here, nothing should stop you from fulfilling that experience. Nothing. Because you already know, right? And in that knowingness, you also know that it's going to take time. It'll take time to grow. It'll take time to evolve. It'll take time to get you where you want to be. But all you have to do is start with one step. One simple step. One step. Okay? So I thank you all for coming in and for holding space with me. We will be here on YouTube every Monday, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, unless I'm traveling, which I will be. I'm heading to Africa in March. So I will be in Africa. I will be on the motherland in March. And y'all will know about those dates. But for right now, I'm here every Monday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Y'all know my tagline, right? I am here for the healing. I am Sista Keachia, your inner child healing guide. I am here for the healing, starting with my own, and then because it's an inside out job and extending it out to the community at large and to the world and all of those who receive my message. Okay. So I thank you for being present with me. I thank you for showing up, for receiving what I have to share. And I thank you for just being you. All right. Namaste, you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful night.